to become who we want to be as individuals. And at the end of the day, that's going to help us be a successful offense.
Man-to-man, one-on-one coverage because the safety rolls to Jefferson's side.
Jordan Love hit me up the night of the draft, just congratulated me, let me know it's time to work. A.J. Dillon was open arms.
Von Rock caught a ball with his thighs. We didn't even talk about that.
It was more of with his ass.
If he throws a good ball, this is a running, catching touchdown untouched.
Like, KP does like these flips after every win, and I'm like just waiting for him to do his flip.
To know that we still love each other, that's what football brings us.
Across the safety's face.
You can tune in anywhere that you guys follow us on social media. Welcome to the Practice Squad Podcast, episode 79. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host Mark, and it's draft season, baby. We're here.
Draft season, man.
There's going to be some free agency stuff, but, nothing to talk about there until roughly a month from now. So you are getting draft content until then. And we are starting off with the most important position, the quarterback position. And the reason why really is kind of twofold. One, a lot of film to go through, and, the number of guys to actually talk about, do film on, legitimate quarterback prospects it's a pretty short and well-defined list. And additionally, this is probably one of the deepest quarterback draft classes we've seen in years. Mark and I are counting, there's probably 7 guys that are going to be, top 100 picks for sure. That could be NFL starters. And Mark and I are seeing 4 to 5 that might, get taken in the first round. That is a high number compared to the past 2 or 3 draft classes. So, Mark, how are you feeling about it? And, are you excited to get into this stuff? I think we're going to kind of start off talking about some of the teams that are kind of quarterback needy too, maybe help us figure out where fits are, where people are going to get picks.
Sure.
But
yeah, no, I think I agree, John. This is the deepest quarterback draft we've seen, I think, in our lifetime. I mean, it's from top 6 or 7 guys is as good of any 6 or 7 prospects at that position we've seen in our lifetime in the last 25 years, without a doubt. There's not really, there's a lot of talk about there's been years where you have safe, sure, hey, he's a franchise quarterback, right? Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck, guys like that, where it's he is going to be a franchise quarterback. This year, I don't know if there's a sure bet, for sure going to be a franchise quarterback guy, but there's 6 or 7 guys that have shown enough where the potential to be that is absolutely there. And it's just a unique draft year where there's a good amount of teams that need quarterbacks. There's been a lot of recent aggression in past years moving up to get quarterbacks that some panned out, some didn't pan out. And this is just a very exciting, interesting year because of the talent at that position coming out. And some teams that really aren't even in need of a quarterback, John, and we'll look into this, may get their future franchise quarterback, kind of like a Packers Jordan Love thing, in the 2nd or 3rd round. You never know.
Yeah, and we'll look at right now too. Very interesting situation that is unfolding pretty much right before we started filming this episode. Justin Fields has unfollowed the Chicago Bears, right? And so there's conversation, right? Are they going to stay with Fields? Are they going to draft his replacement? Is there going to be some trades involved? I think most likely scenario, and Mark, feel free to, check me on this if you disagree. Most likely scenario is that Justin Fields is going to be traded away for capital. And the first overall pick is going to be traded to the Washington Commanders, who I think are very high in Caleb Williams due to their Kingsbury hiring. They're going to move up to 1, and then Bears are going to draft assuming, Drake Maye or somebody in that 2nd pick. That is what I think is the most likely scenario. I think this post here where I think Fields might have caught wind that is the direction that the organization is heading at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of beginning of the draft drama, but I also think this is kind of what people expected. There's too much draft capital on the table for the Bears to make this move, for them to decide to stay with Justin Fields, who's going to be a free agent in 2 years anyways. It's a very interesting situation.
I could tell you what you just described is what I would do as a coach, as a GM for the Bears. I would definitely trade that first overall pick, knowing how hot a commodity Caleb Williams, not only just to the Commanders, but there's a lot of other teams obviously very high on Caleb Williams. The Commanders have showed their cards, though. That hiring is obvious. What their plan is, you could probably get a shit ton of value for that first pick and only move back 1 spot. And honestly, depending who you ask, there's some guys that think that Caleb Williams isn't the QB1 in this draft, and we'll dive into that shortly. But there's a situation here where the Bears get the guy they want, at quarterback, Drake Maye, with the second pick. They get a bunch of draft value for trading the first pick, and they get rid of Justin Fields, send him off to whatever team he wants to go to. It's a win-win-win situation for the Commanders. They get their guy. The Bears get their guy with a bunch of value. 2 years in a row trading that pick to get a bunch of value. And then, Justin Fields gets a new fresh start. So we could see it working out for everybody. Really.
Yeah, and so quarterback, I'm saying likely teams. Right now, you can also, use the word needy, except the Bears, they're not needy, but they're just taking advantage of the situation. We got Falcons, Broncos, Raiders, Commanders, Bears, Patriots. Those are all teams that I'd say it's very likely that they are picking a quarterback, within the first round, first 2 rounds. Teams that you need to keep an eye on that might be picking a quarterback higher than you'd expect, or maybe trading to get a guy that they like, would be Vikings, Steelers, Seahawks, Giants, Rams, Panthers, Jets. And we can kind of get into why we kind of put those on our sleeper list on each of these guys. But that first set of guys or teams rather, like, definitely pay close attention to the offseason moves they're making, whether or not they try to go sign a quarterback free agent or if they're trying to bolster their draft position or anything like that. And with that, Mark, any other commentary you want to talk about before we really start breaking down film on these guys?
No, I think the biggest thing with any sort of draft projection, you got to look at the full picture, right? If they for example, guys like Bo Nix, he's got Auburn film, he's got Oregon film, he's got stuff that he did as a young player, mistakes that he corrected over the course of his college career. You have guys like J.J. McCarthy, who has not as many plays on film as some of these other guys. He's only 20 years old, only 2 years as a starter, and Michigan didn't really have to use him as much and didn't have to rely on his physical ability, more so just his leadership and decision making in big moments. So you got to take all of that into account when you evaluate each player, and so you got to look at the film, not just numbers, not just awards, not anything like that. You got to look at the film, and you got to kind of look at what they've done over the course of their full career, not just one season, not just one game, and that's what we're going to try to do here.
Yeah, and I think the amount of film you have to work with, like you said, really matters in that sense. Because a guy like McCarthy, right, sure, he's been kind of more of that, people are using the word system, quarterback, or game manager, or whatever. But regardless of what your opinion is of what he's done on the field, fact of the matter is you only have about 2 years to really assess that versus a guy like, Bo Nix or something like that, where you have,
6 years.
6 years exactly of starting film. You're right, a little bit different of a decision-making process. So let's start with Drake Maye. Like we said, Drake Maye, Caleb Williams, kind of 1A, 1B as far as what the discussions have been. I think Mark and I assume that, let's say the Bears stay put, he would probably be the first guy off the board. We might be wrong in that assumption. We'll see in that, but we'll start with his film here. Mark put together threads of every single quarterback we're going to talk about today. So if you like the film, some of the conversation that's being had here, make your way over to our Twitter. Mark is probably going to put out, some TikToks and things like that as well. So just make sure to keep an eye out for that. But Mark, I'm just going to go play by play here. Sure. I'm not a great quarterback evaluator. I'm an offensive lineman, as we know here, so probably shouldn't have a whole lot of strong opinions on what they're doing on the field. Mark, on the other hand, a little bit better with that stuff. So I'm just going to go play by play here. And, what are you seeing that gives you certain opinions here? What things should we be looking out for? Quarterback comps to current NFL guys, any of that, I think is resourceful conversation to be having.
Yeah, so if we can slow down each clip, John, to just a little bit, and I'll kind of talk through it, and you can just kind of let it play at a slower rate. Drake Maye stands out to me because he's huge, okay? This guy's 6'4", 6'5", but he's athletic. He's interesting because he's the youngest brother in his family. I think he's got 3 or 4 older brothers, so he was beat up his entire life. He was always trying to chase what his brothers were, which gave him a competitive edge, right? I know that being the oldest brother, both my younger brothers, I think, benefited because I grew and got bigger faster than them, and, I was hard on them. And then I think they were more athletic and tougher because of that. John, you're the oldest as well. You could probably look at your brothers and see the same thing. So weird things like that you got to look in when you do these draft analysis. But this first play, this is a Justin Herbert, Josh Allen kind of play. He's got the protection. He's scanning the right side of the field. It's not there. He rolls left, settles right in the a pocket, and then throws across his body. Now, this ball is not caught for a touchdown, so this does not show up on the stat sheet. And this is what I mean by the things that you can't just look at stats. This ball in the NFL is caught, I'd say, 8 out of 10 times. Okay? Receiver here doesn't make the play, but if you look at his movement, his tracking, settling his feet, turning his hips, and then throwing this thing, I mean, look at the arm mechanic, right? Like, that is a big arm, accurate throw across his body, not an easy throw by any means, and that thing should have been caught for a touchdown. That's a special NFL Sunday play that we've seen very few NFL quarterbacks do consistently, but you're going to see Drake Maye do it relatively consistently as we look at the rest of these clips.
Take a look at this next clip.
So this next clip is we've only seen a couple other guys ever do this. This is Patrick Mahomes did this on Monday Night Football against the Broncos, and the whole world went crazy, right? This was kind of in the beginning of the Mahomes era when that was starting to develop. Like, what are we watching? This guy's not from planet Earth. Drake Maye here. This is just a simple zone read. Okay, he's got the option to run the ball. He actually misreads it. Like, the defensive end plays it well. Probably should have just handed the ball off here. You can see the guy he's reading does not commit to the dive, so he should have just gave the dive. But wrong read, but he makes the play after. So right here he notices when he's running, okay, this was a mistake. Stiff arming, and he's using his right arm to stiff arm. And this is stuff that you can't coach or teach. He throws a touchdown with his left hand. Now, keep in mind, Drake Maye is right-handed. Okay?
That's impressive.
That is stuff that, like, this stuff shows up in, I don't even know, like, you never coach a guy to do this. This is just playmaking, instinct, stuff that you cannot teach or coach, and that's the stuff NFL prospects, rarely have. And when you do have it, coaches drool over it because they see this and they're like, okay, I can coach him to read zone read better, but I can't coach him to do that when he misreads a play. That is a short list of guys have ever shown anything like this on film.
Well, and I think what's also promising too, just from like a maturity element, is that like this is not his first instinct, and we can probably get into a conversation of Maye versus Williams versus Daniels, like how quickly they are to really start using their feet to try to make a play. I think Maye's probably the lowest out of those three guys that I just mentioned there. And yet when he does, he still can do crazy stuff like this. And I think there's a lot of value to that because you do see on, some of these project quarterbacks, right? I think the biggest cause for concern on a lot of these quarterbacks is that like how quickly they're going to try to do that. And that makes all of the other things tougher to teach, right? Because if their first instinct is to go and try to use their legs and try to be the entire offense, that creates a lot of problems in the NFL. You see that with project quarterbacks, quote unquote project quarterbacks, all the time at the NFL level. So,
yeah.
But we'll move on to this next play here.
So again, this is the first deep ball you're going to see of him, right? First thing you notice is his ability to slide in the pocket without leaving the pocket completely. So you notice his feet, right, and his hips turning to where he needs to go with the ball. But instead of running away from pressure, you can slide away from pressure. Buy yourself just a hair more time and then get the ball out. So obviously what he does in the pocket there is impressive. But look at where this ball gets delivered, okay? There's a free blitzer. He knows that. He sees that he's got to get the ball out. He gets one-on-one coverage on the back end because of this blitz. He recognizes that, slides, buys himself time, and throws this thing up in the air right over the outside shoulder, which is exactly where you want to go. Defender can't get there. It's my guys or nobody's. And this is a great catch, but this is a great throw as well. This is something you have to have as an NFL quarterback in today's game. You got to make teams pay when they bring pressure, and because you're going to leave guys on the back end vulnerable. And if you can complete passes like this at a high rate, which Drake Maye did in college for 2 seasons, this is what you're looking for. Okay, this is the Josh Allen, this is the Justin Herbert comparisons. When I talk about those two guys, okay, I'm not saying Drake Maye is those two guys, but I'm saying he does a lot of things like those two guys. And obviously it's projection, and Josh Allen and those guys have done it in the NFL, but Drake Maye has the potential to do that, in my opinion. This is a rolling left, okay, for a right-handed quarterback. Throwing back inside across the middle of the field is a no-no. Coaches teach you not to do this. This is how turnovers happen. You are coached not to do this. There's very few guys that do this consistently and get away with it. You have to have a rocket arm to do this, and you have to have awesome anticipation and field vision. This is without a doubt, one of his best throws he had in his college career. Running all the way left, turns and just flicks the wrist, and on this inside dig route deep down the field, places it perfectly in a dangerous area. Receiver does a good job coming back to the ball. This is just another thing that you can't teach this. These are the things that you see on film that wow coaches.
And then last one here. Sheesh. I'll slow this one down for you too, Mark.
Yeah, so we've shown some, where he has to slide in the pocket, some down the field throws. This is a red zone throw. Okay, he's got a post route. It's bracket coverage. Okay, so bracket coverage, John, if you want to pause it like right as the receiver breaks, keep going. Right about here, you pause it. So bracket coverage, he's got a defender that's playing him low underneath, right? Mm-hmm. He's got a safety over the top. So there's two guys, they call it bracket coverage. It's a very hard window to throw that ball in. Most quarterbacks would go to their next read. He anticipates that this guy's going to win across the low man's coverage, and he can get the ball in before the safety gets there, and that's exactly what he does. So he anticipates it. He throws an absolute laser here in the red zone, which pinpoint accuracy down the red zone is very important, and having the ability to make throws like this against tight coverage, because everything gets tighter and tighter and harder to score the closer you get to the end zone, in the running game and in the passing game. So you have to be even more pinpoint the closer you get to the end zone, and I wanted to put this play in there to show he's capable of doing not just the big down the field throws, not just the rolling out left and making impressive throws right. He can make this consistent, like, every down snaps that you have to have. Right. And I think that's because a lot of quarterbacks can do the hard stuff and sometimes struggle with the easier stuff, or vice versa. Drake Maye, to me, does both, and that's why I have him as my best quarterback prospect in this year's draft as of now.
Yeah, and so I guess we can maybe talk about that a little bit more. Like, obviously the whole debate right now is Maye versus Williams, and we're about to talk about Williams' film. I think we're both in agreement that Williams is a better, what we call like off-script quarterback. Like, he's just better at, the best at making those kind of plays and making those kind of decisions. Maye, you'd say, is maybe more like, better at just being in a system, better at executing that system, obviously has all the physical attributes needed. Is there anything else that, as we're about to get into Williams' film here, that you feel like we should keep an eye out as far as the comps between these two quarterbacks?
Biggest thing to me, I guess, would be size. Size and stature. Drake Maye, I think, is much bigger, and I do think has a bigger arm. I will say Caleb Williams makes just as many impressive down-the-field throws, and like you said, they both are very, very good off script. I think Drake Maye is a little bit better on script than Caleb Williams, which is why I slightly put him ahead of Caleb Williams. But Caleb Williams, he's the best off script quarterback prospect we've ever seen. And he is the closest thing film-wise to what Patrick Mahomes did in college. And I'm not saying he's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I'm saying when you watch this guy play and you say, what quarterback does this look like? Keep in mind, he's playing against college players and not NFL guys yet. And we'll see if it translates. But this is the closest thing we've seen to how Mahomes plays the quarterback position coming out ever. And that's just a fact. I know the historic quote of him saying that I can do all the things that Patrick Mahomes can do. Very arrogant. A lot of people didn't like that. Right. But he wasn't far off, because in what he was doing in college was a lot of the things we see Mahomes do in the league. Now, there's levels to this, but yeah, we'll see how he translates. But he is very special off script. This first play, he makes a guy gets beat, the offensive lineman gets beat right away. He's got to make something happen. He does. Then he steps up, understands to scan the field back to the left. Receiver does a scramble drill, turns up towards the sideline, and then he places this up over the underneath defender, but settles the receiver down so he doesn't get hit by the safety who's playing over the top deep. This is way harder than it looks. He makes stuff like this look easy, and he makes off-script plays look scripted. I think that's the biggest thing with Caleb Williams, and really all these guys Lincoln Riley's coached. He's the next guy in line, right? You've had the Jalen Hurts, you've had the Kyler Murray, you've had the Baker Mayfield. All those guys had great college careers and have done pretty damn good in the pros for what situations they've been given. And it's because they practice this stuff, and they are comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think Lincoln Riley does a great job. He's the quarterback guru for college football, and Cliff Kingsbury obviously is a part of that as well. This, I think, so people talk about, you want to talk about character issues with Caleb Williams, right?
maybe an ego, the painting of the fingernails, the F Utah stuff. I think all that stuff's over the top and weird, but listen, you make throws like this, paint your fingernails. I don't care. Do whatever the hell you want to do. If you make plays like this, you can do whatever you want to do, in my opinion, because there's nobody else that can do this. Pump fake, freezes a guy, gets outside, escapes the contain, and then on the run, before he goes out of bounds, is able to throw this thing to a scrambling receiver with perfect over-the-shoulder accuracy.
It's crazy.
And I will say, Josh Allen, I did a film breakdown in Aliens of the Week this year, made a play just like this against the Chiefs in the regular season, where he was about to go out of bounds. People thought he was just going to throw it away or step out of bounds, and all of a sudden he puts the ball perfectly in play to a scrambling receiver. It takes a special type of guy to do this, and Caleb Williams does this stuff consistently over and over again, and has done it for 2 seasons in a row. Did it at Oklahoma as well.
Crazy.
Stepping up in the pocket here.
This one's
okay.
nuts. Opposite
yeah,
hash.
so he's on the right hash. So he's on the right hash. He steps up in the pocket, gets blitzed, right? The defender is left on an island, and you would think that he threw this thing with absolute, just completely normal form, like just a nice, easy pitch and catch. From the right hash to outside of the numbers up the left sideline, he puts this thing over the receiver's shoulder on a fade ball. He threw this thing off 1 foot. He threw this thing while jumping. You know, this is a 50, 55-yard pass, perfectly placed. And it's again, things that are tough to coach guys to do, and he makes it happen consistently. You want to blitz this guy and leave guys down the field, he makes one guy miss, and it's a problem. And you see that happen all the time with guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, guys that can make your pressure fail. Now you're vulnerable on the back end, and they make you pay when you do that.
This one's also nuts. I think anybody that watches sports Twitter like at all, you've probably seen this play about a half dozen times anyways.
So when I watched this play live, John, interestingly enough, I think this is actually planned for him to roll right and then go back left like that. Because I think it's a planned throwback route just based on the timing of it, but it doesn't take away the fact that how incredibly difficult this play is and how easy he makes it look. So they make it look like it's going to be like a quarterback sweep or sprint right. He turns and he throws this back shoulder. I think it's intentionally called a back shoulder here. Turns, sets his feet, flips his hips, and then literally flick of the wrist puts this thing perfectly. You're looking at a 35, 40-yard throw.
Crazy.
Back shoulder with pinpoint accuracy. You guys see it. You guys watch it. A lot of people will hate on Caleb Williams. He's getting a lot of shit right now for God knows what reason. People just like to hate, top prospects for whatever reason. He's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback in this draft. You cannot argue it.
This one's hilarious.
This is the definition of off script. Drops the snap, right? Drops the snap. Most quarterbacks are going to just fall on this. They're going to pick it up and throw it out of bounds. They're going to pick it up and do something stupid like throw an interception. Like we've seen it happen. Even Patrick Mahomes does. I've seen this happen to Mahomes, and he makes the wrong decision, takes a sack, trying to extend the play instead of just getting on it. He picks up a fumbled snap, sets his feet while taking a hit, and throws the thing 50 yards down the field for a touchdown, a bomb.
I mean, if you could just pause it like right here, right, and say, what do you think the result of this play is about to be? And then obviously turns it around into a touchdown. It's ridiculous. That's insane. He is a special talent. Would you say that this is okay? Like things just fell perfectly into place for this to happen, and he honestly should have fallen on that just based, or like is there cause for concern there? Again, like I'm always worried about quarterbacks trying to play superhero a little too often. If people hear me say annoying stuff like that in reference to NFL quarterbacks sometimes, like I feel like at an NFL level, maybe, that edge rusher is fast enough or the linebacker blitzing is fast enough, and he actually is able to get on that ball before Williams is able to pick it up and throw it or something like that. Like, is this a bad habit that in this case wasn't punished in this particular case?
Yeah, I think, I think you're going to ask a lot. If you're as good as Caleb Williams is, and some of these star quarterbacks, they get a lot put on their plate, right? And it's interesting because you see so many guys that end up being great pros that maybe don't have like outstanding statistical college careers. One of the guys we're going to get into here, JJ McCarthy, shortly, he's a guy that doesn't have amazing stats. He didn't put up ridiculous numbers. Guy won games, and he did what his team needed, and what was best for Michigan was not to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game like USC did. There's different ways to win football games, and for USC, for most of his time there, and even at Oklahoma, it was the Caleb Williams has to be special and has to be Superman show. And that is a formula that will win you games, but it can also cost you at times because he's human. He might look like a superhero at times, but he is human. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have off days. I think the Notre Dame game this year is one big one to look at where, he didn't bring his A game.
Right. Sorry, last play here for Williams. Slow it down, get rid of audio.
I'm going to send you
that
one more.
That fake pitch is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm going to send you one more play, too, so we'll have two more plays for him.
All right,
There's one that I think is his best college play. This is, again, they coach you not to do this, especially in the red zone. Like, you're rolling right on a play action. Your two primary receivers are not there. It's not open. Arizona plays this well. And you come to your third last progression across the field crossing route, and you just throw a laser while jumping. And you put it, notice where he puts this ball, up and high, where it's safe, right? Worst thing that happens here is it's 3rd and goal. You're on the 2-yard line, right? Understanding worst thing that happens is this goes over the receiver's head and it's incomplete. Give your guy a chance to make an incredible play, but there's no risk here. The defender's not going to get to it. You know what I mean? So the problem is if he throws this ball low, it's picked. Or the guy has a chance to pick it. But because of the placement and the accuracy and the velocity he chooses to throw this thing with, the worst thing that was going to happen here is incompletion. Your team comes out and kicks a field goal, or you go for it on 4th and 2. The worst thing he could do here was misthrow this, and then it's a pick, and you turn the ball over on the 2-yard line. That is a no-no. That is a gigantic no-no. Loses you games, especially in the NFL. You cannot get away with stuff like that.
And here's that other play that Mark was talking about.
Yeah, so this, as we were talking about it, and this will be posted, but John, this is the best play I think he had in his career, and this was in his first career start at Oklahoma. This is his coming out party. This was like when the world was put on notice about what this kid can do. This is in one of the biggest rivalries in college football. Steps up in the pocket and throws this thing 50-plus yards, back shoulder to the pylon. Like when they talk about throwing the ball to the pylon, you cannot place this ball any better than where he placed it. And again, this is his first career start. Steps up, throws this thing, I think it's 55 yards. Back shoulder.
Nuts.
My guy can get it. Your guy can't. Give receivers a chance to make a play. He consistently does that. He's one of the best down the field extending the play guys we've seen in a very long time. And in the NFL, coaches they're gonna love that because they see that and they say, okay, he can do all that stuff. This is stuff that's hard to coach. But if he struggles with, on script plays, I can get him right. I can coach him. I can fix him, right? It's like that. It's a coach's ego thing. It's a GM's ego thing. They see the star power that he has, and then they see some of the errors that he has on just a down-to-down basis, maybe some of the character flaws that people are talking about, and they think, okay, I can transform that into a Patrick Mahomes because that's absolutely what everybody thinks he could be. And I agree. I really do think that his ceiling is Patrick Mahomes, talent-wise. I don't know if he's got the same mentality, but how he plays football, the way that, the skills he has, looks a lot like Patrick Mahomes. You can't even deny it.
Now, as far as teams, right, obviously people are attaching him to the Commanders. Bears sitting pretty with number 1. Maybe they decide to stay put and take him instead. Who do you feel like is, out of these quarterback needy teams that we're mentioning, right? Falcons, Broncos, Raiders, Commanders, Bears, Patriots. Let's say trade up potential is valid for any of these teams. With these two quarterbacks right now that we've already talked through, where do you see fits here? From a scheme perspective, from the personnel that's already on the team, from the coaching, who do you think is all right, Drake Maye, an X team, match made in heaven. Williams, an X team, match made in heaven.
I think it's Williams and the Commanders really solely because of Cliff Kingsbury.
Mm-hmm.
They're familiar with each other. He helped with USC last year, and he's a Lincoln Riley guy through and through. And I think he's comfortable. The system will translate a lot of time for rookie quarterbacks is about how can you transition them mentally into how the NFL works, how the NFL play calling is, taking more snaps under center, going through new personnel, right? You have new receivers that you're working with. You got different ways of organizing your offense and structuring how everything goes, right? In meetings and schedules, stuff like that. So having someone that he's familiar with to kind of ease that bridge is huge. Like, I don't think you can put how important that is, and that's why the Commanders, I think, paid a shit ton for Kingsbury to come be their OC. So I think that's a match made. Also, they have a pretty damn good receiving core. I'm sure to get the first pick, they'll have to trade maybe a guy or two. But even if they trade Scary Terry or Dotson or somebody, they're still going to have a solid receiving core for him to work with. So I think the Commanders and Williams are a great matchup. And then honestly, I think Drake Maye will go to the Bears, which will be a good situation for him. But I think the best situation for him, honestly, is New England. And that people can, I think they don't have necessarily great receivers. But I think it's a new era in New England, and I think the Bill Belichick being out will benefit a young quarterback coming in because they'll be willing to try to build around him more and help him out early instead of like, hey, Mac Jones, go be Tom Brady. We're going to draft like late receivers. We're not going to make any moves in free agency. We're going to draft a lot of tight ends, and we're going to say, you go be Tom Brady and just like make us win games, and we're going to rely on our defense. I think the Patriots will help their quarterback more. So I think the Patriot situation could be very good for Drake Maye.
Got it. Now this next guy we're going to talk about, JJ McCarthy. I'm interested, and this is my prediction. We'll see if it pans out. But the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson are probably parting ways. Russell Wilson's already trying to sell his house. I think Peyton has pretty much told him to his face that they're out on him for next year.
Publicly, yeah, I think it's known. It's known.
It's like 99.9% that Russell Wilson and the Broncos are breaking up this season. I feel like Sean Payton, he's looking at who he wants to be his next guy. They might consider, free agency and the quarterbacks that are out there, but frankly, I don't think it's a good free agent quarterback market this year by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe I'm trying to think who's the best free agent quarterback right now. You're talking Kirk Cousins and
Baker's going to be. Well, Baker's going to be.
But I think Baker's going to go to Tampa, and I don't think he's Sean Payton style. I think out of rookie quarterbacks, just Jameis, sure. I think out of rookie quarterbacks that we're looking at, I assume that Sean Payton is probably pretty high on JJ McCarthy.
I think a lot of the league's becoming higher and higher on JJ McCarthy. He's again. Let me talk about JJ before we get into the film too. Guy's a winner, right? If you're looking for one word to describe JJ McCarthy, he's a winner. Won in high school at two different high schools. As a starter at Michigan, lost one football game. Biggest rivalry in sports, he goes 3-0. Takes Michigan back to the promised land, wins the national championship, which they have been talking about and trying to do. And Michigan fans have been complaining and arguing with each other about coaches and quarterbacks and for years. And he brings them back. In his short little stint at Michigan, he brings them back to the glory and brings them back to the pinnacle of college football. The guy is a winner. He's a leader. The way he carries himself, everybody talks highly of this kid. He's so mature beyond his years, and I think that benefits him greatly in this draft. A lot of these guys, Penix, Bo Nix, even Drake Maye and Caleb Williams, they're older than him. They're 23, they're 24, they're 25. I think Bo Nix is going to turn 26, for God's sake, right? So JJ's 20 years old. JJ is going to turn 21 this year. He's a baby, man. He's still a project in terms of how you can mold him, but he's so ahead of his years mentally and emotionally, and obviously his play, he didn't really get to showcase as often his playmaking ability as some of these other guys, but you're going to watch the film and you're going to see some of the stuff he does isn't much different than what you see Drake Maye and Caleb Williams do. He just didn't do it as much, and he wasn't asked to do it to win games. So when his back's against the wall, JJ in many moments made plays like those guys, but he just didn't do it on a regular basis because Michigan didn't need to. So I don't think you fault him for being on a better overall football team with a better system for him to win games because he won a hell of a lot more than these other quarterbacks we're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, and I know I mentioned the Broncos here, but really any team with a strong run game is going to be a great fit for NFL fit for McCarthy because of what you're saying. Like he clearly was incredibly comfortable, capable, and in control of the situation in Michigan because of the fact that Penn State game happens and screw it, we're going to hand the ball off 30 times in a row. Why not? Right? They had the capability to do that. Obviously, you're not going to see that in the NFL, but because of that, every single time, like you said, Mark, back against the wall, had to make a play, had to throw a deep ball, had to do something smart, had to scramble. He always showcased his ability to do that when the time called for it. And like I said, maybe a little more risks, right? You have 2 years of film rather than 5 or 6 years from some of these guys, which is crazy to say, but thanks, I guess, COVID and transfer situation for that. But every time that you watch this dude take the field, there's those same flashes. So we'll get into the film here, and I think Mark put together some great film for making that argument. So
this is, national championship, biggest stage you can get on, right? They go with a heavy personnel, true play action. You see Washington's defense step up. The anticipation and understanding, if you watch the safety, he comes down and then he gets back into his zone and he turns his back. You're going to see JJ do this a couple times. The defender turns his back to JJ. When you see the back of someone's head, you can throw that thing with anticipation knowing that he's not going to make the play. So he puts this thing right outside number 7, the safety's ear hole, knowing that he's not going to turn around and make a play, and knowing that Roman Wilson, the primary on this play, is going to run right into that vacancy. The anticipation and placement of this is next level. So people can slander JJ all they want. This is a Sunday throw in the biggest stage in college football with the entire world watching. And this is early in the game. Washington's playing you tight, and he comes out and makes this throw to help move the chains. I think this was on the very first drive of the game. Very similar play here in just as big of a game, Ohio State, right? This is for everything. This is to go to the Big Ten title game. This is to have a chance to go to the playoff. For everything Michigan ever wanted, and JJ made a promise and said, we're going to get you back. He had to win this football game to do it. The pressure could not be higher, right? Same thing. Defender turns his back to JJ. He sees this happening, throws the ball right off his ear hole to Roman Wilson. Between 2 defenders, though, it's just a little bit tighter coverage from the guy who's chasing him across the field. But it's a more impressive throw, but it's just as big of a moment, and he does it. This is now 2 times you're seeing it happen. In the 2 biggest games probably of his career so far, these are the kinds of plays he makes at pivotal moments. Crazy. So you can't argue with stuff like that.
I think play extension is a very underrated part of what people talk about in reference to him as a quarterback.
It'll get overlooked because of how good Caleb and Drake Maye are at extending plays and big arm plays, off script plays. JJ, in his rare needs to go off script, is spectacular. Okay, he is just as athletic as anybody in this draft with his legs, and he has just as big of a rocket arm as anybody in this leg, except maybe Drake Maye. But this is ridiculous. Rolling left, torques his body, throws it on the back line of the end zone here against Nebraska. Late throw right before he gets to the line of scrimmage. He's very athletic, and he's very, very aware of where defenders are going as he extends plays. He's very smart. He understands what they're doing down the field, and he knows where he needs to put the ball in a safe way. He doesn't make many mistakes. I mean, you're looking at this is a guy who had a 70% completion percentage. Part of that, because they had a great run game and a great play action game, and it made it easier for him. But part of it, 70% is 70%. Okay, led the country in completion percentage last year.
Last one here.
Now this is more of this is like an NFL, we got to get it, red zone. There's no play action. They know you're throwing the ball. He gets a cover 2 look here where the corner jumps the out route. Okay, he's reading this low, high, low. Okay, so he checks this bottom receiver here on the 10-yard line, sees the corner coming up, and throws an absolute laser to beat the cover 2 corner who can't get underneath that route. If he doesn't throw this thing with this velocity and this accuracy, it's picked off or tipped or incomplete. And again, you're talking about the red zone. You want points. This is a special throw from the left hash to the right numbers.
Crazy. I'm trying to pull up too, just because it wasn't in here, but I'm sure anybody that has been watching football is going to know which play I'm referencing. Alabama, the whole flea flicker, whatever situation, or I mean, McCarthy. I mean, if he doesn't make that, just talk about like, that's not even off script. I guess that's just, like, hey, things did not go as planned and you have to make a play there. Really, in that situation, he had to make a play to get to the national championship. Sorry that we can't find the film on it right away, but I mean, that's just one of the most memorable plays to me because, I mean, he, has to make a play to get the ball in his hands, is able to do that, sets his feet, and then just launches that thing downfield for a completion. I mean, I think his athletic ability is very underrated. His throwing ability is super underrated. And you're talking about a guy that was, in a Harbaugh system, not like the easiest, most simplistic system on the face of the earth offensively. Obviously, completely there, from a mental capability. One of the youngest guys, and he's incredibly mature.
I mean, John, what box does this kid not check? And
Right.
if for people that talk about like, okay, was his back really ever against the wall? Michigan was always the best team all year long. They have the best, they have the most combine invites in NFL history this year. Like, he had a great roster, great defense, great running game. All he had to do was hand the ball. Did anybody not watch their back against the wall have to drive 98 yards to force overtime against Alabama in the Rose Bowl? That wasn't running the ball. That was J.J. McCarthy being J.J. McCarthy, leading his team, a team of destiny, giving them a chance to go. Because that game did not look likely that Michigan was going to find a way to win. It just didn't. You have the ball on the 2-yard line. You have to drive the entire field against Alabama and a Nick Saban coach defense to give yourself a chance in overtime. And he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's as high as pressure as you're going to find. And he checks every box to me, and his stock is only going to continue to rise as this whole draft season happens because, like we said, not as much film, but the stuff you do see, he's the most consistent winner in this draft, and it's not close.
Yeah, and again, like I've said this multiple times throughout the show and people talking about JJ, I think it's really important to remember sustainable success in the NFL is not built purely on a quarterback's ability to scramble or make athletic plays or things like that. They're incredibly valuable. Do not, misunderstand what I'm saying. Patrick Mahomes' ability to go off script and to scramble and do those things absolutely adds a ton to what Casey is able to do offensively. Caleb Williams being able to do that is going to add a ton to wherever he goes offensively. But if you just have a guy that's really damn good at doing his job behind a strong offensive line and a good run game, which there's a lot of teams in the NFL where that's their core, that's their foundation, that could be your guy, right? And so again, like, I think evaluating quarterbacks is one of the hardest things to do, pre-draft. Like, it's the thing that people, I think, hit on the least, that, people are maybe shooting in the dark on the most. And there's a plethora of reasons for that. But I think one of them that is super underrated is, how does this particular talent, this particular quarterback fit with this particular team, scheme, personnel, all of that stuff. It matters a ton. J.J. McCarthy might not be the right guy for 15 NFL teams and maybe looks not great with those 15 NFL teams if you were to be drafted by them. And there's another number of NFL teams where it's the exact opposite, that he's a superstar in the making, franchise quarterback, just because of the infrastructure around him. And that goes for Williams, Maye. We're about to talk about Penix. It matters for all these guys, and that's incredibly important to remember. So with that, let's hop into Penix here. He did some incredibly impressive stuff in the national, really all season, but in the national championship, I really thought that he even losing game, getting beat pretty bad by Michigan, he still did some incredibly impressive stuff. And he was clearly very badly injured, probably from when the game started, but it was visibly obvious probably by the second quarter or so. So we'll hop into some film from Penix. Here he is against USC, Mark.
Yeah, so again, a lot of people, the biggest hit they have on Michael Penix is, well, he's older and he's injury-ridden, right? He's had 2 knees, shoulder issues. Like, this doesn't look like a guy who's injury-ridden to me. He escapes out of the pocket, showing athleticism, throwing on the run, and delivers this beautiful strike over 3 defenders, exactly where the ball needs to be. You watch his escapability in the pocket, you're going to see it in several different clips that will show. This guy, like people forget how elusive and electric he was as a playmaker setting plays at Indiana. And then, yeah, he had some injury issues, and he maybe he's less elusive than he was, but he's still very much capable of protecting himself and escaping blitzers and making plays down the field. He did it at Washington all year long. And make no doubt about it, this was the best quarterback in the country last year, and it wasn't really close. So, in my opinion, this should have been the Heisman winner, given what happened, in the postseason and how he, beating Texas and, playing tight with Michigan and just how he carried his Washington team, who nobody saw doing anything preseason, all the way to the national championship. Like, he definitely still can protect himself and use his legs to do what he needs to do in the NFL. So that weird, people talk about the injury history. Sure, it's something to note, but I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are talking about. This guy is, I think, the most NFL ready in the class in terms of like cerebral, in terms of, big arm, in terms of a NFL style offense in college. I think he's the most NFL ready QB in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think the injury concerns are valid if you're worried about the dude just not being on the field as much as you obviously would like a franchise starting quarterback to be on. I think there's still concerns there. As far as his athletic ability being inhibited by his injury history, I don't think there's much.
Yeah, this is the same thing. This is him escaping two offensive tackles. Both get beat. He gets pressure from his left, pressure from his right, and he's able to escape. Look, he gets a free blitzer, escapes, recognizes where the blitz was, beats the blitz, and is smart enough to just tuck and get the first down on third down with his feet. He did this all year long. I don't know where the notion is, this weird theory that he doesn't have like the legs or he doesn't have the athleticism. He's one of the more athletic quarterbacks that we've seen coming out in a while. Like he can do it. He can do all the things you need him to do to extend plays and to get first downs with his legs. And he's smart. He's very, very cerebral. I do think he is the most NFL-ready quarterback in this year's draft. It doesn't mean he'll be the best, but I do think that if he plays early, if any of these guys had to play tomorrow in the league, I think he's the most ready to do that.
Yeah, obviously very seasoned. And I do laugh because, people like, I think between injury history or just long time playing, right? Like people said similar things about Hendon Hooker when he got drafted. Like, oh, like you're drafting a 26, 27-year-old guy. Like we are in an era of NFL quarterbacks where these guys, if they are franchise tier guys, are playing well into their 30s. Like it's not a big deal for an older quarterback to be on a rookie contract. In fact, I think there could be a premium to that, right? Because you're getting them, at an affordable cost for, a later stage of their career. So I definitely don't think, like I said, there's much water to that argument at all about he's too old, he's too injury ridden. I don't think that carries weight, especially like you said, Mark, like clearly very NFL ready as far as his decision making ability.
He's got a rock. He has a rocket of an arm too. Like it is, he made some very impressive throws against Texas in the semifinal. And
crazy throws.
Really, tight, windows and beating safeties and anticipating what's happening down the field and recognizing coverages. Like he is, I think he's probably the smartest quarterback in this draft. And, I think he's one of the best leaders in this draft. And the one thing with Michael Penix, and as you can, this is just a deep, out route here that he completes from the left hash all the way to the right sideline. Again, he's crossed the field. These are NFL style throws. You got to be able to make these huge arm throws. He did it at a high clip, high percentage all the time. The biggest thing for me with Michael Penix, when you watch this guy play over the course of his career, whether it was at Indiana or at Washington, no matter how big the game, no matter what the situation was, he never ever looked phased, never looked nervous, never looked like the moment was getting to him. He just is like an assassin. Like he's just calm and collected at all times. And that to me is like that cerebral thing that you can't coach. It's one of those things that you have to have that killer instinct. I'm not so sure Caleb Williams or Drake Maye has that. Michael Penix has that. 100% has that. Like I'm going to go out and do my job and win my team this game. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do that.
This play is probably the most impressive one to me out of what you showed here, is just because like his ability to flip his hips there and just get the ball out
with pressure in his face. Exactly. Yeah. And again, the coverage is pretty tight here. He's got to place this ball right on the outside of the receiver's body here because the defender makes a good recovery. But in my opinion, he's the second in terms of down the field accuracy. We'll get into Jayden Daniels eventually. Jayden Daniels was the most accurate down the field big arm throw guy this year in college football. Second was Michael Penix. And they were way far ahead of everybody else in terms of consistency, completing the ball down the field on go balls, on deep posts, and stuff like that. So
both quarterbacks too. It's worth noting studs at receiver.
Studs at receiver for sure. But chances are, whatever NFL team they go to, will have some studs at receiver because the league is full of gifted wide receivers and tight ends. So he's an interesting prospect, but I'm high on Michael Penix, and again, this is a deep class.
Now, probably the last of, I would say, very high in the, high first round conversation, we have Jayden Daniels. There's a lot of really interesting stuff when we were digging into the film. I think Mark and I, got a little bit higher on him just going through the film to, see what stuff we want to talk about here. I mean, his playmaking ability is incredible. Talk about doing off-script stuff. But, I mean, arm talent is ridiculous. And so we're going to get into that. Obviously, Heisman winner. And, you can have an argument on how winning your team is and whether or not the player in that position is actually worthy of the Heisman in relation to that. But the film absolutely speaks for itself on how valuable he is to his team. Oh, that is not the layout that I was going for. There we go. So, yeah, we'll start with this play here. Just being mobile.
Yeah,
making something out of nothing.
John, you hit it on the, you hit the nail right on the head. It's Jayden Daniels. You can break down his game. You can say, well, LSU didn't win, and all these other quarterbacks had maybe more successful seasons. What are we talking about here? He won the Heisman. Statistically, he had one of the best years you're ever going to see, up there with Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, stats. Was LSU padding those stats? Maybe a little bit, but his defense was atrocious. And so, yeah, they did only win 8 games, but that's 8 games with an SEC schedule. That's 8 games. He shined even against the best teams he played. He might not have won all those games, but he absolutely is a special playmaker. The biggest word John and I use to describe him is twitchy. When you watch him run, when you watch him scramble,
Alabama play will show you in a bit.
He's very twitchy.
Yeah.
This clip here is going to show the big arm ability that John talked about. He was, like I said, the best down the field. Had that best completion percentage of deep balls on go balls on posts, and it wasn't really close in college football last year. This is up the numbers, and he puts it exactly where it needs to be against Florida. Just an on-time, regular throw, an inside fade. And again, he had some gifted receivers as well. But what this guy did vertically to attack defenses, and then also what he's able to do with his legs, and you combine that, that's what NFL guys are looking for.
Right. This is an impressive play. Talk about that twitchiness.
It's like he's so decisive, right? Like he's scanning down the field. The second he decides to go, it's go time. And that's what I mean by his twitchiness and his change of direction, his decision to go from dropping back to pass to running it catches you off guard. And it's like sneaky because I think in just a straight, I don't know if he's going to run like a crazy 40 time or anything. I don't think he's like Lamar Jackson or anybody like that in terms of speed. But his game speed and how he runs makes him faster on the football field than in any sort of combine drill. So I don't know if he's going to test very well. People are going to be like, oh, wow, he looked a lot faster on tape. I think sometimes that's a good thing. That's some guys the speed are faster. That matters more. That's the speed that matters more, exactly.
Is this the play that I'm talking? Yeah, this is the ankle.
Yeah, this is one of the
ridiculous.
This is against Alabama again, tie game, third quarter. Scrambles out, stops on a dime, and literally, I think this Alabama player got hurt on this play. Literally hurt his ankles. Again,
literally watched his lower leg coming in to make
it's the suddenness, right? The sudden stop.
Oh, man.
It's and a lot of people too talk as you see him take a big hit here at the end of the clip. He's not that's the one knock you can have on him. He is not a crazy big guy. He's thin, right? He's thin. And, there's talks about him putting on weight, but there is a lot of comparisons in terms of the size problem to Bryce Young. He's taller than Bryce Young for sure, but he has that skinny frame. And if he's going to be a runner with that frame, we've seen it happen where quarterbacks struggle to stay healthy. He's going to have to be very smart on how how they use him. Whatever team gets him, you're going to have to be very smart. Now, I don't know. Again, the every down and distance stuff, I'm not so sure is really his best part of his game, and which is why I have him kind of dropping in the draft a little bit, and why I have him behind some of the guys that we've already talked about. But there's no doubt that in a different draft year, this could be QB1. And a lot of people are, his stock's rising for. For me, his stock's decreasing a little bit. A lot of people had him as like QB3 or 4. He slipped a little bit on mine, but he's without a doubt a first-round talent. This is him going through his progression. It's not there. Extend the play, and then keep your eyes downfield and come and find the guy who's working back into the picture. Alabama did a good job defending. It's just a crossing route combination. They did a good job defending it because they drop a bunch of guys back and only bring 3 guys. He sits in the pocket until he can't, and then once he has to leave the pocket, he makes something happen down the field. I think the biggest thing to know here, John, is he doesn't leave the pocket until he has to. So many quarterbacks, especially in today's game in college football, and this is a fault to really all of the ones we've already talked about. Every one of them does it. They leave the pocket at times when they don't need to.
Right.
And it's a almost like they're more comfortable doing that. Like Caleb Williams he'll scramble even when he doesn't necessarily have that pressure forcing him out of the pocket. And some quarterbacks will do this on purpose because it puts the defense in a pickle. You notice there he doesn't do it because he didn't have to.
But it's back to the conversation of like, what's your first instinct, right? Like, it's really hard to coach people out of those first instincts. If your first, thing that you want to do as a quarterback is to start running, right? That can be a problem. It's a hard habit to break. And I'll agree, Mark. He's obviously very mobile. But I noticed the same thing. We were going through his film. Is like, no, he'll sit in the pocket and try to make something happen for as long as he can. But like you said, when he makes the decision to run, there's no hesitation about it. He's taking the ball into his hands and going.
He's got, like, again, we talk about this twitchiness, the stopping on a dime ability. Like you compare it to Lamar Jackson. Like Lamar Jackson's ability to change direction and go from full speed to stop to back to full speed. Like there's nobody like that in the world. Jayden Daniels I'm not saying he's anywhere near Lamar Jackson, but some of the stuff he does, like this play, is reminiscent of stuff Lamar does. There's just no doubt about it. You can't even deny it. Yeah,
it's incredibly impressive. Now, the next 2 guys that we're going to talk about, the last 2, I would say Mark and I aren't as high on as the other ones that we just talked about, but I think there's still potential there. I think Mark, you're higher on Rattler than you are Nix. Is that correct?
I am. Yeah, okay. I am.
So let me grab that thread first. So I stalled a little bit here.
Spencer Rattler, to me, obviously started at Oklahoma, and then Caleb Williams comes in and steals the show. He goes to South Carolina, and he does some pretty good things. I think he grew up a lot at South Carolina. I think you could see it on the film. And, he had a really, really good Senior Bowl, and I think he was the Senior Bowl MVP as well. He's definitely got the talent. He was a top recruit coming out of high school. Like, he definitely has the arm talent and scrambling ability and stuff you're looking for at quarterback. The question really just is, can he do it consistently, and can he do it on its, because South Carolina, they won games, but they never were like really in the conversation for being one of the best teams, but he was absolutely a reason they were even somewhat relevant. This first play, I think is one of the better plays you'll see in this entire video, right? In this entire breakdown of all our quarterbacks. He's rolling right. He settles his feet to kind of buy himself a little extra time just to freeze the defense. And it's the slight stuff like this in the pocket to manipulate pass rushers that buy you that extra second to give you a chance to make the throw that go unnoticed. And then to throw this thing on the run, there was literally 2 inches of separation here from that defender's hand to the completion. Like, this had to be perfectly thrown, and it's not an easy throw on the run. And very risky because this is a pick 6 if he doesn't throw this thing perfect. And coaches are probably holding their breath when this ball comes out. But he trusts himself, and he works on this. And you can clearly see he's confident. This is a confident throw. This is a Sunday throw. It's about as good as it gets when you're watching film of a quarterback and you see how they throw this out route. And then you talk about toughness and being fearless, knowing how to handle. Like, this is a guy, the offensive lineman gets beat pretty much right away. And this is a play action, deep shot play, and the Florida Gators are doing a stunt, and they slant, and South Carolina gets beat up front bad. And he recognizes it, knowing he's about to take a hit to the ground, throws this thing perfectly accurate down the field on the deep post route. Because, again, you bring pressure, you're vulnerable on the back end. And these quarterbacks' ability to recognize that and give their guys chance to make a play down the field and deliver a ball that accurately with a 300-pound dude in your face, you got to respect it. And you got to recognize that is...
So I love the emotion in this person's hand right here that pops up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Gamecocks, man. They don't mess around. They love the Rat. I call him Spencer the Rat, you know? You got the last name Rattler. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Does this not look a lot like the Caleb Williams throws that we showed earlier?
Yeah.
You know, like play action, steps up in the pocket, throws this thing while taking a hit, while running. I'm telling you, like, Spencer Rattler's the guy I don't think many people are talking about. And he's one of those guys that he's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick. But in a different year, he very well might be. And that's the thing with some of these guys that are towards the back end of this list that we have. And we did break these down in order. But Spencer Rattler can do it all, man. And get him in the right circumstance, and who knows what he'll be able to do. This is a back shoulder ball from the right hash to the left outside the numbers. This is a Sunday throw, dude. Like, this is a Sunday throw. Like, we watched Patrick Mahomes miss on this throw in the Super Bowl to Kelsey 2 weeks ago. And here Spencer Rattler is making it, like, completing it. It's a hard throw, man. Back shoulder all the way across the field. Perfectly placed, man. Like, he definitely shows things that make you think twice. This is the last one here of Rattler. He again, offensive line beat right away, buys himself time, continuing to get back, right, stiff arms off, and then he's falling backwards off one foot, throws this thing up and over the defender on a scramble drill. It's just like the soft accuracy of that. Like, there's tight window accuracy where you're ripping a ball in and you're hoping that your receiver can get his hands on it. This is like anticipating and giving your guy a chance to run underneath it, but also have to be soft enough where the defender can't get to it. And it's a very, very tough thing to do. I would argue this is harder to do than the tight window fastball accuracy. Like, this is a very touch throw, and he absolutely has that touch that it requires to make tough throws like this. And he does it consistently. So you can hate on him all you want. You can talk about Spencer Rattler. Definitely a legitimate prospect, and a guy that I think is going to get slept on in this draft just because the nature of who's ahead of him.
Yeah, and like you said, Mark, I mean, you're higher in him than you are Bo Nix. I think 90% of people probably don't even know. Like, Rattler's not a name that they're thinking of at all as an NFL prospect, and somebody that surprised me for sure. But I think you show the film and also the circumstances, right? Obviously, getting beat out by Williams, right? Shit, you're going to kind of fade with the story in that situation. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad athlete. He's QB 1A or 1B in this draft.
John, can I tell you a story?
Yeah, sure.
Joe Burrow got beat out by a few guys at Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow got forgotten about. And then he went to LSU, and he had an outstanding career, and he's one of the best guys in the league now. Now, Rattler didn't do as much as Burrow did in college, but a lot of people wrote him off when Caleb Williams came into town and showed him up. So just because you're not Caleb Williams doesn't mean you're not going to still be a good NFL quarterback, and doesn't mean you couldn't pass him down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, I think the film that you broke down there, those are Sunday throws. There's definitely potential there. Again, we're not saying he's a first round guy necessarily, but I could see his draft stock rising as time goes on here. Absolutely. Last guy we're going to talk about, Bo Nix. Now, Mark, do you want to break down, just before we get in the film here, and we showed mostly positive plays of all these guys. Why do you feel like Bo Nix is not really as much of an NFL talent as maybe other people are saying he is? You're obviously not super high on him. You don't think his draft stock is going to be incredibly high. What is separating what you're seeing, film, all of that stuff, versus maybe what just the narrative is around how Oregon played this year and his place in that? So to me, Bo Nix, there's a few knocks I have on him.
obviously his age, right? He's played 6 years of college football, so I don't worry about that a ton, but it is something to note, something to when you compare when some of these comparisons are very tight, that becomes a little bit more of a valued thing than not. The systems that he played in at Auburn and Oregon, that kind of like super spread, flashy offense, like it doesn't always translate well to the NFL. I don't see a ton from him that like does translate well, aside from him being I think he's a great character guy. I think he's a great leader, and I think he is a winner through and through. But the stuff you look for, and you look at these other quarterbacks we broke down, I don't think he's got the big arm, that these other guys have. I don't think that he has the consistency on a down-to-down basis on regular like short routes and checks and stuff like that these other guys have. He doesn't have the star power and like the big play ability necessarily that these other guys have. Now he can do it and shows he can do it at times, but the percentage of time that he does it, to me, isn't where these other guys are at. And I think, again, in the different year, Bo Nix is a higher prospect, but there's just a lot of guys ahead of him. It's a very talented class, and that hurts him in the grand scheme of things, and it hurts a lot of these guys in the grand scheme of things.
Right, and you do see him make this play, obviously. And this is a pretty
this is at Auburn,
memorable one, yeah. But again, this is at Auburn. It's a long time ago, and the amount of Bo Nix film you have to go through to see plays like this versus some of the other guys, you got to dig a little deeper to find it.
The sample size, I guess the best way to summarize your question, John, the sample size of Bo Nix is bigger than any of these players. He has literally the most career starts of any NFL or any college quarterback of all time. Yet it's harder to find plays like this, like you said. So he's got the most plays. And plays like this that stand out and wow you just don't happen as often as these other guys.
Right. We're going all the way back to Auburn to see that. Now again, not complete knock on him. Obviously, there's this experience element, pressure in his face, able to make a play there.
I also do think he's got a little bit of an interception issue. Like he'll. And this was more, I guess, early in his college career. At Oregon, he was much better. But at Auburn, he had serious issues with like forcing the ball into coverage and, just doing things. Just his protecting the ball is like literally the number one thing for these guys. Like there is no excuse not to do it. You have to do it. It's the biggest difference between winning and losing at every level of the sport. Right. And he had a serious problem with that at Auburn. He did correct it a bit. I will give him credit at Oregon. It's interesting because his career at Oregon is very different than the one at Auburn, and it's because it's different systems and different conferences. He shined at Oregon. He was a Heisman candidate. Like this is a window throw here. We talk about anticipating and getting the ball out with accuracy and recognizing coverage quickly. Like I think Bo is good at all those things. I'm not saying he's a bad prospect by any means. I don't see him as a great NFL quarterback one day. I don't see him as an NFL starting quarterback one day. And that's my opinion. A lot of people disagree. A lot of people will have some of these guys behind him in the draft. I have Bo Nix in our list as the final guy. And we did do these players in order of where I think these guys should go in terms of quarterbacks being taken off the board.
Yeah, and obviously wasn't a hot take heavy episode, but maybe Bo Nix going under Rattler, you could consider one. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much our quarterback breakdown. I'm really excited for this draft because this is, like I said, first time probably since, really pre-COVID that I can remember like this much conversation around the quarterback position in the draft. It doesn't feel like teams are going to be quite as desperate because of that too, maybe, right? Obviously, we saw the Panthers trade away a King's ransom to trade up and get Bryce Young, who, while he's a good quarterback, there were knocks on him, right? And there were knocks on CJ Stroud, and there was a lot of questions. I mean, there's 4 or 5 guys in this draft class that are legitimate first-round worthy picks. We'll see where they end up because there's a lot of quarterback-needy teams going to this season as well. But, this is one of those draft classes you might look back on, 5-6 years later, and, you're having conversations about where these guys actually fell in the draft versus the fact that maybe all 4 or 5 of them are still starting or something like that. Like, that is a legitimate possibility for this particular draft class. We're going to be reviewing every single one of the position groups in a similar fashion. Some you might get a little less film than others or whatever, but we're going to try to kind of keep this format, take a little bit of a break when free agency rolls around. It's a very exciting 2 weeks in the NFL, and then get right back into the draft. Mark, any closing remarks for you as we kind of close this episode out here?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, like every year, the quarterback draft is always, the controversial, hot debate, right? Because so many different guys have so many different opinions, and just because most guys have Caleb Williams at 1 and Drake Maye at 2, like that doesn't mean that's how it's going to pan out in the longevity of what this thing looks like. Those guys might get drafted ahead of other guys, sure, but how many times have we seen guys get passed on in the draft and then they're the guy that we talk about for decades about how great they are as an NFL quarterback? I think this is one of those years where you have literally 5 or 6 NFL prospects that I think could be great NFL quarterbacks and have all the skill set to do that. All 6, will they be? No. But could we see 2 or 3 of these guys genuinely become like household, like how CJ Stroud came into this season and took over the league, or how Josh Allen and Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence and Herbert and all these guys have kind of taken over the new face of the league? I think we do have 2 or 3 guys in this draft that will be competing for playoff games and Super Bowls in the next 5-6 years. And I think that's really, really exciting because you don't see that very often. You usually have like 1 guy, maybe 2. We literally have 5 or 6 that we're talking about. And, you could rearrange and mix up the order of how those 5 or 6 go. And I don't think you can really be wrong. Like Penix could go ahead of all of everybody. JJ could go ahead of everybody. Drake Maye could slip. Caleb Williams could slip. Jayden Daniels could jump everybody. Like there's a lot of people that have different opinions on all that, and none of it would surprise me. And I think that's
there's
really
a lot
exciting.
of variance on what's going on inside of a NFL, general manager's scouting office, right? Like, I think it's the thing that everybody forgets is like, what you're seeing Mel Kiper post or stuff like that. Like that's his order. That is by no means what everybody else's chart looks like. It varies a ton between teams. Clearly, I mean, this
John,
past draft is a great example.
Look at some of the guys we talk about in this league. Like there were plenty of guys taken ahead of Justin Herbert in the draft. There were plenty of guys taken ahead of Josh Allen. There were plenty of guys taken ahead of Patrick Mahomes. There were plenty of guys taken ahead of Lamar Jackson. So we talk about like the faces of the league right now. I mean, look at Brock Purdy. Like, what are we talking about here? Like
all the guys, literally
everybody was taken ahead of him. So, I mean, literally, like, just because you get the first pick doesn't mean you get it right. Like, a lot of times you don't get it right. And so, again, I think having depth at this position value into this draft is beneficial for teams because you can probably get the right guy, the best guy, maybe without having the first or second pick. So for teams like the Patriots and the Falcons and the Vikings or Seahawks, it might be a great thing for you because you get a steal just by the grace of God or just by the grace of another team making a mistake, in the scouting. Because like you said, it is very hard to project NFL quarterbacks. So I don't know. It's very exciting. It's always interesting. These opinions will obviously probably continue to turn as we get closer and closer to the draft, but very exciting time of the year. And, we love doing draft analysis. We'll start doing some game analysis as well of the past NFL season here, moving forward in this offseason. So we're excited to do some more film breakdown of past NFL games and really look at why things happened and why they looked the way they did.
Yeah, and it helps us look forward to next season too, and just some factors to consider about problem areas that teams are looking to address in free agency or the draft, for example. Another thing, too, that I'd like to introduce that I'm just now throwing at Mark, it's the first he's hearing of it. I have done, so far to date, 0 mock drafts going into the season, but it became a running joke in the practice squad group chat that I would do ballpark 1 per day, might have been 5 per day. We're going to get a counter going each week and see where I'm at. Because
John is a mock draft freakazoid. He's obsessed.
It gets obsessive.
John... We didn't even mention the biggest news of this week. John's engaged. So we waited till literally the last thing we talked about in this episode. We were just so excited to get. That's how much we love football. We just got so excited. But no, John is engaged. So big congrats to John here and his now fiance Hannah. Practice Squad Pod family is growing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely exciting weekend. And yeah, I mean, not the first thing I'm coming in, blazing to talk about for a football podcast and all that stuff, but Hannah and I have been together for a very long time. Mark has known her for a very long time. Super exciting weekend. You know, I don't know if Mark even knows like the whole story of everything that went down, so I'll have to fill him in. But yeah, it's super exciting.
Exciting stuff, man.
Very excited to put you know, girlfriend, boyfriend in the retired jersey banner somewhere, and we can finally switch to fiance. That's been the most exciting part, is we can stop using like the more like, you know, kiddish.
Fiance is a better word, dude.
Way better.
It's gonna be very cool saying this is my fiance instead of this is my girlfriend. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. I'm very happy for John. Practice Squad Pod is better with Hannah being a part of John as officially.
And worth mentioning, since we are a podcast, Hannah does audio editing for podcasts as one of her jobs. If you are listening to this and you yourself are a podcaster and need audio editing work, you know, come help support the wedding budget and stuff like that we're working on. Anyways,
that's John plugging it.
Yeah, appreciate y'all, and we will see you guys next week with some more content. Peace.
See you guys.